Edmund Wallace Hildick. Edmund Wallace Hildick, 1925–2001, was a prolific children's book author who wrote under the name E.W. Hildick. He wrote, amongst others, The Ghost Squad, Jim Starling, Birdy Jones, Jack McGurk and Lemon Kelly series. Background: he was born in Bradford, England in 1925. After 2 years' service in the RAF, he became a secondary school teacher, then a writer, before moving to the United States to become editor of a literary magazine. He was one of the very few British juvenile authors of his generation to achieve success in America. He started writing while he was a teacher in a secondary modern school at Dewsbury, in the West Riding of Yorkshire in England, his intended audience being tough, modern kids similar to the ones I teach. He died in London, England. Series: Jim Starling. Jim Starling, 1958. Jim Starling and the Agency, 1958. Jim Starling and the Colonel, 1958. Jim Starling's Holiday, 1960. Jim Starling and the Spotted Dog, 1963. Jim Starling Goes to Town, 1963. Jim Starling Takes Over, 1963. McGurk Mystery. The Nose Knows, 1963. Dolls in Danger, 1974. At the Deadline for McGurk. The Case of the Condemned Cat, 1975. The Case of the Nervous Newsboy, 1976. The Great Rabbit Robbery, 1976. After the Great Rabbit Rip-Off, Rip-Off, a bit Rip-Off, a bit Rip-Off, of 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 Rip-Off, a bit Rip-Off, a bit Rip-Off, of Rip-Off, of Rip-Off, of Rip-Off. The Case of the Invisible Dog, 1977. The Case of the Secret Scribbler, 1978. The Case of the Phantom Frog, 1979. The Case of the Treetop Treasure, 1980. The Case of the Snowbound Spy, 1980. The Case of the Bashful Bank Robber, 1981. The Case of the Four Flying Fingers, 1981. McGurk Gets Good and Mad, 1982. The Case of the Felon's Fiddle, 1982. The Case of the Slingshot Sniper, 1983. The Case of the Muttering Mummy, 1986. The Case of the Wandering Weather Vanes, 1988. The Case of the Vanishing Ventriloquist, 1989. The Case of the Purloined Parrot, 1990. The Case of the Desperate Drummer, 1993. The Case of the Fantastic Footprints, 1994. The Case of the Absent Author, 1995. The Case of the Wiggling Wig, 1996. McGurk Fantasy. The Case of the Dragon in Distress, 1991. The Case of the Weeping Witch, 1992. Birdy Jones. Birdy Jones, 1963. Birdy and the Group, 1968. Birdy Swings North, 1969. Birdy in Amsterdam, 1970. Birdy Jones in the New York Heads, 1974. Lemon Kelly. Meet Lemon Kelly, 1963. Lemon Kelly Digs Deep, 1964. Lemon Kelly and the Homemade Boy, 1968. Louis. Louis' Lot, 1965. Louis' S.O. S. 1968. He Ate. Louis' Snowstorm, 1974. Louis' Ransom, 1978. Questers. The Questers, 1966. The Questers and the Whispering Spy, 1967. Crown Books, One Crown. Back with Perrin, 1968. Here Comes Perrin, 1968. Ghost Squad. 1. Ghost Squad breaks through, 1984. 2. Ghost Squad and Halloween Conspiracy, 1985. 2. Ghost Squad and the Prowling Hermits, 1987. 3. The Ghost Squad Flies Concord, 1985. 6. The Ghost Squad and the Menace of the Malevs, 1988. Ghost Squad and the Ghoul of Grunberg, 1986. Felicity Snell Mystery. The Purloined Corn Popper, 1997. The Serial Sneak Thief, 1997. Allison McNair. The Active Enzyme Lemon Freshen Junior High School, which 1973. The Top Flight Fully Automated Junior High School Girl Detective 1978. Novels. The Boy at the Window 1960. Bed and Work 1962. Mapper Mundy's Treasure Hunt 1963. A Town on the Never 1963. Lunch with Ashurbanipal 1965. Calling Questers for 1967. Lucky Less 1967. Time Explorers, Inc. 1967. C7. Manhattan is Missing 1969. Monte Carlo or Bust 1969. Those Daring Young Men in Their Jaunty Jalopies 1969. Top Boy at Twister's Creek 1969. The Prisoners of Gridling Gap 1971. The Donut Dropout 1972. Kids Commune 1972. Bracknell's Law 1975. The Weir Down Experiment 1976. A Cat Called Amnesia 1976. Vandals 1977. The Loop 1977. The Memory Tap 1989. 9. My Famous Father 1990. Hester Bidgood 1994. Nonfiction. Word for Word. The Rewriting of Fiction 1965. Writing with Care 1967. A Close Look at Television and Sound Broadcasting 1967. 13 Types of Narrative 1968. Children and Fiction 1970.